The mention of concentration camps often conjures up images of the atrocities committed by the Nazis during World War II. However, what many people don't realize is that Canada also had its own dark chapter during the war. In the midst of global conflict, Canada established internment camps for specific populations, including Japanese Canadians, German Canadians, and Italian Canadians. These camps became a symbol of the Canadian government's fear and suspicion towards these ethnic groups, and their existence represents a little-known aspect of Canadian history during World War II. The events leading up to the establishment of internment camps in Canada were fueled by fear and prejudice. In the aftermath of the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, Canada, like its southern neighbor, the United States, became engulfed in anti-Japanese sentiment. The prevailing belief was that Japanese Canadians, many of whom were long-standing members of Canadian society, posed a security threat. As a result, the Canadian government made the decision to forcibly relocate Japanese Canadians from the West Coast, where the majority resided, to various internment camps across Canada. This mass displacement of Japanese Canadians had a profound impact on their lives. Families were torn apart, businesses were lost, and personal possessions were confiscated. The psychological and emotional trauma endured by those who were unjustly detained is immeasurable. Furthermore, the government's actions perpetuated a sense of alienation and discrimination that would continue long after the war ended. The internment of Japanese Canadians was not an isolated incident. The Canadian government also targeted individuals of German and Italian descent under the guise of national security. German Canadians and Italian Canadians were labeled as enemy aliens and subjected to monitoring, restrictions on their movement, and in some cases, internment in camps. These actions were based on the assumption that individuals with ties to Germany or Italy could potentially aid the enemy or engage in subversive activities within Canada. The internment camps in Canada were a mix of different forms of confinement, ranging from forced labor camps to camps resembling high-security prisons. Families were forced to live in cramped and dehumanizing conditions, with little regard for their well-being. The repercussions of internment were felt not only by those directly affected, but also by future generations who inherited the trauma and stigma associated with this dark chapter of Canadian history. It wasn't until decades later that the Canadian government acknowledged and apologized for the injustices inflicted upon Japanese Canadians, and to a lesser extent, German and Italian Canadians. In 1988, the Canadian government issued a formal apology and offered compensation to surviving Japanese Canadian internees. This acknowledgement shed light on the systemic oppression and discrimination that took place within Canada during World War II. The legacy of the Canadian internment camps serves as a reminder of the dangers of succumbing to fear and prejudice. It is a cautionary tale that highlights the impact of wartime hysteria on civil liberties and the treatment of minority groups. The experience of Japanese Canadians, German Canadians, and Italian Canadians during World War II underscores the fragility of democracy in the face of fear and the importance of upholding the principles of justice and equality for all, especially in times of crisis.